Happiness is not something that just arrives at our door. It is not a gift that the world owes us. It is a decision, a practice, a discipline. Every single day, you are faced with a choice to give in to negativity or to rise into joy. And rising is not always easy. That is why you must push yourself, not once, not sometimes, but every single day. Happiness is a daily choice, and this is something many people overlook because they believe it depends on circumstances or external events. Most of the time, people wait for something to happen in order to feel joy, as if happiness is an occasional visitor that knocks at the door only when life looks perfect. But in reality, happiness is not an outcome. It is a decision, an act of will, a daily discipline that begins the moment you open your eyes each morning. The mind, by its very nature, will often search for problems, for imperfections, for reasons to be dissatisfied. It is wired to protect, to anticipate threats, and in doing so it drags you into a state of heaviness. But in that first moment of awareness, when you wake up and start your day, you are given a choice. You can follow the mind into worry, or you can push yourself to rise above it and choose a different lens through which to see the world. That is why happiness is not passive. It requires conscious effort. It requires courage. It requires you to take responsibility for your own state of being instead of handing it over to circumstances you cannot control. When you decide to be happy today, not tomorrow, not someday, but today, you are setting the tone for your entire life. This decision may feel small at first, but it is one of the most powerful choices you will ever make. Think of it like training a muscle. Each time you choose to smile instead of frown, to appreciate instead of complain, to forgive instead of hold on to resentment, you are strengthening the muscle of happiness. And the stronger it gets, the easier it becomes to carry yourself with lightness, even when life is heavy. This is not about ignoring difficulties or pretending that pain doesn't exist. It is about refusing to let difficulties rob you of the inner freedom to remain at peace. Every day you are confronted with challenges, disappointments, and uncertainties. If you wait for those things to disappear before you allow yourself to feel happy, you will spend your whole life waiting. But when you learn to choose happiness, despite those challenges, you take back control of your life. The beauty of making happiness a daily choice is that it frees you from dependency. You no longer depend on someone else's actions to feel good. You no longer depend on the economy, on recognition, on praise, or on luck. You no longer depend on perfect timing or perfect relationships. When happiness becomes your own choice, it becomes unshakable. Even if storms come, even if things don't unfold the way you planned, there is still a place inside of you that remains steady because you have built it with intention. Choosing happiness daily is also a form of discipline. Just as you discipline yourself to work, to eat, to exercise, you discipline yourself to guard your inner state. You recognize that your thoughts are like seeds, and if you water the negative ones, they will grow into weeds that choke out your joy. But if you water the positive ones, the ones of gratitude, love, and kindness, you create a garden that nourishes your soul. This choice is not made once in a lifetime. It is made every morning, every hour, every moment when life tests you. There will be days when happiness feels distant, when the effort feels heavy, when the mind insists on dragging you back into negativity. That is why you must push yourself. You must push yourself to remember that happiness is not a reward waiting at the end of a long road, but a practice available right now. The strength of your life comes from this very act, choosing again and again to step into light instead of darkness, into gratitude instead of complaint, into peace instead of chaos. And the more you do it, the more natural it becomes, until happiness stops being something you chase and becomes something you embody. Gratitude shifts your mindset in ways that most people underestimate, because it changes not just what you see in life, but how you interpret it. The human mind has a natural tendency to notice what is lacking, what is broken, and what is wrong. This is an old survival instinct, useful for avoiding danger, but harmful when it becomes the dominant filter through which we view our lives. Gratitude interrupts this pattern. It pulls your attention away from what is missing and directs it to what is present. Instead of living in a constant state of dissatisfaction, gratitude teaches you to recognize that even in the midst of struggle, there are things to appreciate. It could be as simple as the air you breathe, the food you eat, or the people who care for you. By focusing on what you already have, you start to see your life through a different lens, and this shift creates a natural sense of happiness. When you practice gratitude daily, you create a habit of rewiring your brain. The more you give attention to blessings, the more your mind learns to notice them automatically. This doesn't mean difficulties disappear, but it does mean they no longer dominate your experience. Gratitude acts like light in a dark room. Darkness may still exist in corners, but the light makes it less overwhelming. Imagine waking up and instead of immediately worrying about your problems, you choose to acknowledge 3 simple things you are thankful for. That one act sets a positive tone for your day. It softens your heart, calms your mind, and makes you more open to joy. Gratitude is not only about feeling good, it is about changing the quality of your inner state. The power of gratitude is that it transforms ordinary moments into extraordinary ones. Drinking a glass of water becomes a blessing when you realize many people do not have clean water. Walking becomes a gift when you understand how precious mobility is. Even silence becomes valuable when you appreciate the peace it brings. When gratitude grows, life no longer feels empty, even if it is not perfect. You start to understand that happiness does not come from collecting more, but from appreciating what is already in front of you. This awareness dissolves the endless chase for external things and replaces it with inner satisfaction. Another strength of gratitude is that it shifts your relationships. When you focus on what people do right instead of what they do wrong, you cultivate appreciation and connection. A simple thank you to a loved one, a recognition of their effort, builds trust and warmth. Gratitude softens conflicts and reduces resentment, because it reminds you of the good, even when things are imperfect. It also shifts how you see yourself. When you practice gratitude for your own qualities, your own growth, and your own resilience, you begin to build self-respect and confidence. You stop criticizing yourself endlessly and instead honor your journey. Gratitude also prepares you to handle challenges more effectively. When you face a difficult situation, gratitude helps you see opportunities within it. Instead of drowning in what went wrong, you search for the hidden lesson or the strength you gain from the experience. This does not erase the pain, but it allows you to carry it with more dignity. Gratitude anchors you in the present moment. Instead of always waiting for the future to bring happiness, you begin to find it here and now. The practice becomes like a shield for your mind, protecting you from falling too deeply into negativity. To make gratitude a powerful force in your life, you must practice it consistently. It is not enough to think about it once in a while. Writing down daily blessings, expressing thanks out loud, or silently reflecting on what is good in your life reinforces the habit. The more you practice, the more natural it becomes, and the more your mind adapts to see life through the lens of abundance instead of scarcity. Gratitude shifts the very foundation of how you think, how you feel, and how you respond to the world. Happiness requires effort in the same way success in any area of life requires effort. People often expect joy to flow naturally, as if it should appear without intention. But the truth is that happiness must be cultivated through action, through practice, and through conscious decisions made again and again. Just as the body does not become strong without exercise, the mind and heart do not become joyful without consistent work. If you want to be happy, you cannot simply wait for the right circumstances. You must push yourself into the habits that create happiness. This is where discipline comes in. The effort to smile when you feel like frowning, the effort to forgive when it is easier to hold a grudge, the effort to let go of negative thoughts when your mind insists on replaying them. These small acts are forms of training that reshape your entire outlook on life. There is a common misunderstanding that happiness should feel effortless, that if you must work for it, then it is not real. But look at any area of life that brings fulfillment. Health requires discipline, relationships require communication, careers require persistence. Why should happiness be any different? The truth is that anything worthwhile requires energy, and happiness is one of the most worthwhile goals of all. The effort you put into cultivating joy is not wasted, because it returns to you multiplied. When you make the choice to engage in positive habits daily, such as gratitude practices, mindfulness, or acts of kindness, those habits repay you with a stronger, calmer, and more peaceful state of mind. Think about how the mind works when it is left unattended. It drifts toward worry, comparison, and complaint. It gathers evidence of problems and magnifies them until they dominate your mood. This is the default setting of the human brain. Effort is required to interrupt this cycle. Effort is required to redirect the mind towards something uplifting, something constructive, something that nourishes instead of drains. It may feel uncomfortable at first, like trying to change the direction of a heavy wheel, but with persistence it becomes easier. The effort you put in today makes tomorrow lighter. Over time, what once felt difficult becomes natural, and you find yourself experiencing happiness more frequently, without forcing it. The effort for happiness is also about making conscious choices in your lifestyle. You may need to choose healthier routines that support your body, because physical well-being directly affects emotional well-being. You may need to reduce the time spent on distractions that drain your energy, such as endless scrolling or gossip, and instead invest that energy into learning, growing, or connecting meaningfully with others. You may need to surround yourself with people who uplift you instead of those who pull you down. Each of these requires effort, because the easier path is always to stay in comfort, to follow the crowd, to avoid change. But comfort rarely produces lasting happiness, while intentional effort builds it piece by piece. Another form of effort is the inner work of self-awareness. Happiness grows when you are willing to examine your thoughts, challenge your limiting beliefs, and let go of destructive patterns. This is not easy, because it requires honesty with yourself and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. But every step in this process leads to greater clarity and lightness. The more you understand yourself, the more freedom you gain to choose joy instead of being controlled by old habits of negativity. This is deep work, and it demands energy and persistence, but the rewards are immeasurable. When you look at happiness as a practice rather than a gift, you stop waiting passively and start engaging actively with your life. The effort to create happiness may not bring immediate results every single time, but over the long run it builds resilience. It gives you strength to face difficulties without losing your inner balance. It allows you to keep moving forward even when challenges arise, because you have trained yourself to push beyond discouragement and return to joy. Happiness is not effortless. It is the result of small, repeated efforts that accumulate until they form a new way of living. Problems don't define happiness, and this truth is one that many people struggle to accept, because they have been conditioned to believe that life must be free of hardship in order to feel joy. But happiness is not the absence of problems. It is the ability to face them with a resilient spirit. Every human being will encounter challenges, disappointments, and struggles. No one escapes the storms of life. The difference lies in how one chooses to respond. Two people can face the same situation, and one will sink into despair, while the other will rise with strength and calm. The distinction is not in the problem itself, but in the mindset carried toward it. When you believe that difficulties automatically remove the possibility of joy, you surrender your power. But when you realize that joy can exist even alongside struggle, you begin to understand the deeper nature of happiness. The truth is that problems are not always enemies. Many times they serve as teachers, sharpening your character, building your patience, and showing you the value of perseverance. They expose hidden strengths you never knew you had. They force you to grow, to adapt, to push beyond limitations. Without problems, you would remain stagnant, unchanged, and unaware of your true potential. When you see them from this perspective, they no longer appear as blocks to happiness, but as part of the foundation that supports it. This shift in perception allows you to hold joy and struggle in the same space. You can experience pain yet still feel grateful. You can walk through loss yet still notice moments of beauty. You can carry responsibility yet still find reasons to smile. Happiness in the midst of problems comes from a conscious decision to separate your inner state from external events. Circumstances may not always be within your control, but your perspective is. You cannot stop every difficulty from arriving, but you can stop it from taking away your peace. This requires practice, because the natural tendency is to let problems dominate the mind. The key is learning to pause, to breathe, and to remind yourself that your worth and your capacity for joy are not tied to whether life is perfect. Life will never be perfect, and waiting for that moment will keep happiness forever out of reach. Instead, you must learn to carry problems without letting them define your entire existence. Think about the strength of people who endure great hardships, yet still radiate kindness and warmth. Their lives are not free of struggle, but they have cultivated an inner resilience that prevents them from collapsing under pressure. They have learned that happiness is not about eliminating difficulties, but about meeting them with courage. Every time you choose not to let a problem control your emotions, you reclaim your power. Every time you decide to find something good in the middle of a challenge, you prove to yourself that happiness is not fragile. Another important aspect to understand is that problems are temporary, while the inner qualities you build by facing them can last a lifetime. When you develop patience, resilience, and gratitude in the midst of struggles, those qualities remain with you long after the problem has passed. They become part of your character, making you stronger for the future. This is why happiness cannot be postponed until after difficulties are solved. The journey itself, with its trials and lessons, is where true joy is found. By accepting problems as part of life rather than as obstacles to happiness, you learn to live with a deeper sense of peace. When you accept that problems do not define happiness, you begin to free yourself from constant fear and resistance. You no longer live in a state of waiting for things to get better before allowing yourself to feel good. Instead, you embrace the reality that joy can exist even now, even in the middle of uncertainty. This acceptance transforms the way you move through life. It removes the illusion that happiness depends on perfection and replaces it with the strength of knowing that happiness depends only on your ability to rise above. Don't wait for others or circumstances to make you happy, because doing so places your life in the hands of things you cannot control. Many people spend years believing that joy will come when they finally meet the right person, achieve the right success, or when the world around them finally treats them kindly. They tie their inner state to something outside of themselves, and in doing so they give away their power. Happiness that depends on external factors is fragile because those factors are unpredictable. People change, circumstances shift, and life rarely unfolds according to exact expectations. If your happiness relies on everything aligning perfectly, you will always find yourself disappointed. True happiness comes when you realize that you do not need to wait for someone else's approval, affection, or validation to feel whole. It comes when you stop waiting for life to give you permission to smile, and instead decide that you will create joy from within. When you wait for others to make you happy, you place impossible pressure on relationships. You expect someone else to fill the spaces inside you that only you can nurture. This often leads to resentment, because no one can live up to the weight of being responsible for another person's inner peace. Relationships flourish not when you demand happiness from them, but when you bring happiness into them. When you generate your own sense of contentment, you no longer approach others from a place of neediness. You approach them from a place of fullness, which makes love more authentic, friendship more balanced, and connections more peaceful. Depending on someone else for your joy is like building a house on shifting sand, but creating it from within is like laying a foundation of stone. Circumstances are just as unreliable as people when it comes to determining happiness. There will always be problems, uncertainties, and unexpected turns. If you tell yourself you will only be happy when you get a better job, earn more money, or reach a certain goal, then you are postponing happiness indefinitely. The truth is that even when you achieve what you want, there will be new challenges waiting. If happiness is always tied to the future, you will never experience it in the present. Learning to create happiness in the now is one of the greatest forms of freedom. It allows you to live fully, without waiting for perfect conditions that may never come. Creating happiness from within begins with awareness. It is about recognizing the small joys already present in your daily life and allowing them to matter. A quiet morning, a kind word, the ability to breathe deeply, the warmth of sunlight. These are not small when you allow yourself to truly appreciate them. When you stop expecting the world to deliver happiness in grand packages and instead find it in ordinary moments, you shift your entire perspective. You discover that joy is not something distant, but something already within reach. It also requires taking responsibility for your thoughts and emotions. Instead of blaming others or circumstances for how you feel, you accept that your inner state is your own responsibility. This does not mean denying pain or pretending everything is perfect, but it means you choose not to remain trapped in negativity. You can choose to reframe situations, to focus on lessons rather than losses, to find gratitude even in difficulty. This is the practice of creating happiness from within, and it frees you from waiting for someone or something else to rescue you. Another important aspect is self-love. When you treat yourself with kindness, when you forgive your own mistakes, when you nurture your growth, you stop searching outside for the approval that makes you feel worthy. Happiness grows naturally when you recognize your own value instead of waiting for others to affirm it. This self-generated happiness becomes unshakable because it is not dependent on the unpredictable actions of the world. It is steady because it comes from a source that cannot be taken away. Your happiness inspires others because joy is not something that stays contained within one person. It naturally radiates outward and influences the people around you. Human beings are deeply connected, and emotions are often contagious. When someone walks into a room with anger, that energy spreads quickly and can bring others down. But when someone enters a space with genuine happiness, peace, and positivity, that energy also spreads and has the power to lift the atmosphere. This is why choosing happiness is not only a gift to yourself, but also to the world around you. By pushing yourself to be happy each day, you are planting seeds of light that others can see, feel, and be inspired by. When people see you smiling despite challenges, they realize that it is possible for them too. Your happiness becomes a silent encouragement, a living example that no matter what difficulties exist, joy can still be found. Words may not always convince others, but the energy you carry speaks louder than any advice. Someone who is struggling may look at you and think, if they can carry themselves with strength and positivity, maybe I can too. In this way, your personal decision to create happiness becomes a source of motivation for others to rise above their own struggles. Happiness also inspires through authenticity. People can sense the difference between forced positivity and genuine inner peace. When your happiness comes from within, from gratitude, self-acceptance, and resilience, it has a natural power that others respect and admire. You don't need to announce it or prove it. It shows in the way you speak, the way you treat others, and the calmness you bring into situations. This authenticity makes people trust your energy, and in turn, they are drawn toward it. In a world where so many carry stress, anxiety, and frustration, those who shine with true happiness become like a light in the dark. Your happiness can also change relationships. When you choose joy daily, you reduce conflict, you create warmth, and you give people around you the space to feel safe. Happiness makes you more patient with others, more forgiving, and more compassionate. It shifts the way you respond to negativity, because you no longer mirror it. Instead of reacting with anger or frustration, you respond with understanding and calm. This not only improves your relationships, but also inspires those close to you to adopt the same approach. Children, friends, and family members often model what they see. When they see happiness being lived out, they learn to value it and practice it in their own lives. Another powerful way happiness inspires others is by creating a ripple effect. A single kind smile can uplift a stranger's day. A simple word of encouragement can break through someone's despair. These small acts, born from your choice to live in happiness, travel further than you imagine. You may never know how many lives you touch just by being consistent in your decision to carry joy. The ripple effect continues as those who are inspired by you pass it on to others. One person's happiness can truly change a community because it awakens hope where there was hopelessness. Happiness is also a form of leadership. People are naturally drawn to those who carry light within them. In workplaces, in families, in social groups, the one who chooses to remain joyful often becomes the one others look up to. This is not leadership by force or authority, but leadership by example. By showing that happiness is possible even in difficult circumstances, you become a silent guide. Others begin to notice how you handle pressure, how you maintain perspective, and how you find gratitude even in small things. Your example challenges them to re-examine their own mindset and take responsibility for their happiness as well. The most beautiful part of inspiring others through your happiness is that it multiplies. The more you share joy, the more it grows in you and in others. Each day that you push yourself to choose happiness, you are not only shaping your own life, but also shaping the lives of those who come into contact with you. Your energy becomes a gift that spreads without you forcing it. This is the quiet power of happiness. It transforms not just the person who chooses it, but everyone who witnesses it.